welcome to it. It is the Ace Michael Show biography, and I want to thank everybody for sending your comments and suggestions of how to make the show great. And that means you're watching, which also helps to make the show great. If you ever want to be a guest on the show, you're welcome to. All you need to do is just send us a message, say, hey, I'd like to be a guest. I have something to talk about with you, Mr. Micheals. And that's the best way to get it off your chest, I like to say. If you have thoughts, opinions, ideas, comments, suggestions, convictions, beliefs, theories, come on the show. Today, my guest, she's been on the show before, but this is a better connection. We're on the actual Zoom connection, and it seems to be crystal clear, and it seems to be audio clear. So that's a good thing. Welcome to the show again, Melissa Hull. How are you doing, darling?
I am fantastic. I'm fantastic. It is just really wonderful to be back on the show. So thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Well, you know, what's interesting is that there was a pandemic and a lot of people got sick and a lot of people stayed home. And you apparently got younger looking during this pandemic because pandemic don't crack. You know what I mean?
Oh gosh, you're very kind. But let's not kid ourselves. I work at looking good. I'm just gonna own that fact. I do not mind a good lotion and a potion, or even a skin tightening. I'm down for it. So yeah.
Are you like me? Do you find yourself getting older in that your body just won't do things it used to do? Like I tried to take a flight of stairs the other day and my mind was like, are you kidding right now? Stairs, bro? Stairs? No, you don't do stairs no more.
I have to say I'm probably in the best physical, mental, emotional health of my life right now. So age has been good for me. It's given me really opportunities to listen to my body, find things that I love to do. I decided that going to the gym wasn't my first love, but playing tennis was. And so I play tennis just about every day. I play at least 6 days a week. So yeah, I just take to the court first thing in the morning every day.
And do you find that it's important to do a physical exercise? Like, does it help you keep your mentality sharp and awareness and all that?
Yeah, I find that to move, like I need an outlet to, like hitting a tennis ball is therapeutic, and running around a court and having to disengage from daily life and focus only on a ball and hitting that ball the best, to the best of your ability back to your opponent. It's a great way for me just to kind of zone out. So when I leave the court, I'm really ready to zone in on the things that I need to be paying close attention to. So it's very good for me.
That's really great. Now, when I first met you, you were a motivational speaker. You were motivating people. You motivated me. And now I'm curious, what motivates you?
That's a great question. And thank you. What motivates me is to constantly and continually discover more about myself and to give back those discoveries in the form of conversations with people like yourself. I know for me, I'm always wanting to learn about what drives me. Like, what is it that really am I crazy passionate about? And then allow myself to really align to those things and let the things that are distracting me kind of fall away. So that's what motivates me, is to continually evolve.
Did you ever have, Melissa, I'm going to call it a lightning day? Like for me, my lightning day was one day in Los Angeles. I was sitting on a bus. I was listening to my demos of music, and I decided I'm never going to do anything else in my life except this career. Like I really have decided nothing else will work for me. Nothing else will make me ever as happy as this. And I remember that day vividly because I had other opportunities and other options, but that day eliminated all those other options for me. And I've been doing this ever since. What was your lightning day?
I don't know if I had a lightning day per se, but there was a point in time when I realized that I had an opportunity to make a difference. And that became kind of like that lightning moment for me. But it came after a very significant tragedy in my life. My 4-year-old son passed away to an accidental drowning, and having to go through that experience was not easy. There were moments where I thought, honestly, it was going to be too much for me to carry. Um, and I struggled. But because my son was only 4.5 years old, learning about water safety issues, unfortunately for me, after the fact, was something that I felt very passionate about educating other parents on so that they could avoid a situation like I found myself in. And so that worst day of my life, in many ways, is what's led me to all of my best days preceding that, which is to be in service to other moms, dads who have lost children, to educate young people. And I'm talking little ones, like in preschool level, about water safety and how to be safe around water. And then also to take this experience and share it with the world, and offer my thoughts and my opinions on how we can take our worst days and truly create remarkable lives, that we're not relegated to a life of sorrow and sadness, that we actually are meant to be joyful. And the trick is understanding what it takes to get there.
Yeah, I love that. I want to go back. We're going to come
Sure,
back to this, but we're going to
sure,
go
sure.
back first to old school.
Yeah.
Little baby Melissa, what was she like?
Um, I'm a talker. I've always been very chatty. Very friendly, very much wanting to meet people, and very curious about my surroundings, which I love that about myself. I love that I'm constantly curious about just different things: architecture, history, culinary arts, the arts in general, music. I love to explore, my surroundings. I love to travel. And even as a young girl, I always envisioned myself like with suitcases, getting on airplanes, going to new places. I grew up in a very small town, so television was a very big part of my life because there wasn't a lot in my town. So the National Geographic, channel, or documentaries that would come on, I would just be glued to the television because I was so ex- just just awestruck at the differences between where I was living and all of these different destinations in the world. And I knew when I was young that I was going to travel, and I have.
Hmm. And so, was there a thing like, when you're young, there's pretty much a bones to bones thing that you think you're going to become? Like, you're going to be an astronaut, you're going to be an athlete, that. And then life trajectory changes us to something we never really thought. Like, when I was a kid, I heard a Michael Jackson album and I thought it'd be great to be Michael Jackson one day. And then I realized, well, I'm not really that singer dancer style like Michael. Michael was Michael.
Yeah.
So then I became something else in show business, which worked out fine for me, just as well. But was there a thing that you just knew in your heart that you were going to be? Did you go to medical school, for example, and then you decided, nah, you know?
No, actually, I had dreams of, you know, uh, like writing books, but children's books. And I never really saw myself as maybe like I write from life experience. So my book, Lessons from Neverland, is a memoir. And I have shared more serious stories, but truly in my heart, I'm a very light, very kind of whimsical, very like I have a great imagination. I really should be writing children's books, but maybe I will. Maybe that's in my future. But yeah, I always saw myself as doing something where I was talking to people or sharing a story, if you will,
Mhm.
in a book, and I kind of kept pretty close to that.
And I like in one of our talks, you were talking about the infidelity, the I word,
Yeah.
and it's such a hurtful, painful thing.
Yeah.
We've all been there in one sense on one side of it or another. So most people are familiar with it. But what would you tell yourself now to avoid that pain now that you've been through that?
I would not avoid the pain. I think leaning into those types of moments are where we can truly learn and grow. I think avoidance is where we get ourselves in trouble. And the longer we avoid things, because there's a question that I had to be willing to ask myself, and that was, what is it that I know that maybe I don't want to know? But what is it that I know? And I
Mhm.
knew that there were things that were wrong. And I knew that there were things that didn't make sense. And I knew that um, there were things that were easier to just overlook than to ask about, because asking the question would cause an argument or it would cause some kind of disruption. And so it was easier to, in my heart, know, but not confirm. And it wasn't until I was really willing to not only ask myself that question, but ask my then husband that question.
Mhm.
Did anything ever really change for the better? Because I realized that I was sacrificing a life that I really did deserve to be living. And that was a life with the full truth, not partial truth. I was entitled to have all of the facts, not just the ones that somebody else decided was all I needed to know. I
Mhm.
needed to know it all. And then from that place, I could make decisions that would be right and best for me, and not just continue to allow things to just kind of go on the way that they were. And here's the thing, I looking back, I realized that I was upset more about not knowing the truth than I was about the actual infidelity, because there were problems in my marriage, and the death of our son did, it did exacerbate the distance between us. And
Mhm.
I dealt with it one way, he dealt with it another way. But I never looked at his choice as a narrative of my value. It was not about me. It was about the his inability to be honest with me. But I was there willing to work on the marriage. He wasn't willing to be honest about it, and therefore we couldn't get anywhere inside of the marriage. And ultimately, we did divorce, but we did try to hang in there for a long time.
And
Yeah.
I found that the communication, I remember hearing someone say this on a radio show. He had reunited, I think he united the Bloods and the Crips gang in LA. But the
Oh
point
wow.
was that he took these two factions
Yeah.
that would never get together. It was impossible. No one would ever think they would get together. And what he said was, he said that it's communication that builds bridges. It's the lack of communication that creates problems. And when I first heard him say that, I was like, what are you talking about? You just can't communicate with everybody. But then I thought about it and I thought, actually, yeah, he's right. That's the
Yeah.
problem. When you can't communicate, that's where the problem is going to get bigger and bigger. You can tell a person anything. You should be able to just say to a person, hey, I'm not going because I'm not interested. Nope, I'm just not interested. And then that eliminates it. Now there's no feelings about it. Nobody has anything underneath the table. It's all out in the open. Um, so, anyway, I brought all that up to say sometimes when we go through a trauma, we find something to replace the trauma. We start working harder on our guitar playing skills
Okay.
because we're trying to put that out of our mind. Did you go through that? Did you start
Absolutely.
doing more work because of
Um,
what you were fighting against?
it's really interesting. I wasn't so like the loss of my son was such a big and significant experience that I literally felt weighted down by the sadness. And I didn't have words necessarily. I didn't like going to talk to people would only help for a little while, but then I would be alone with myself and I just had this heaviness, this thing, this weight. It felt hard to breathe. It felt hard to just move my body. It felt like I was in this permanent fog. And so one day I just picked up I just picked up my children's crayons and paper, and I just started doodling. And from there, I started to feel lighter. I started to feel like this emotional release of something. And then I went to painting, and believe it or not, that led to a career in art. I had an art career, or a career as an artist for a period of time, which then led to writing. Because before I had words, I had emotions. I had a sensation, like my way of being was communicating to me. And then that process led me to the discovery of the words that I needed to say on a page, in a book, on stage. I just began to share these ideas and these stories. And that's how I have arrived at where I am today as a published author and a professional speaker, and a life mentor for other women.
Mm-hmm.
So that's
And
where I am. Yeah.
how often, Melissa, does someone say to you, "You changed my life"?
You know, I have been blessed to hear that. It was my intention to make a difference. So when I do hear those words, I know that I'm right on course. That's where I want to be. I want to be affecting people's lives in the way that other people affected mine at those most critical and vital moments where I needed somebody to give me some hope so that I could get through that next tough day.
Does there ever come a time or a topic that you say, for example, okay, so we live in a world, Melissa, that's full of pandemic right now still. We have war going on. We have Bitcoin. We have all these different things that are just attacking us every time we turn around. Solar. Oh my gosh, another solar person at my door. So my question though is, how much of that do you say doesn't belong in your motivational thesis? Like, obviously there are some things you want to talk about, you want to reach people, but there's also got to be a filter. You have to have your own personal opinions and your own
Yes,
personal life.
absolutely. I think I have always recognized that I need to understand the audience that I'm speaking to. And there are some times where I don't want to speak to an audience. I just want to be, to be myself. I'm not so different though. Like I don't think that you would have a conversation with me here that I wouldn't be willing to have, or it would look differently outside of this context. I am a very genuine person by design because I like this authentic me. It took work, it took a self-discovery process to arrive at this version of myself. And I'm very proud of who I have evolved to become at this point in my life. That's not to say that I'm done evolving, but I am proud of where I am and who I am and the heart I have and the compassion that I have and the willingness I have to be a force of good in this world. And I know that you would not see me treating people differently in front of a camera or off of a camera or having a different conversation. I am who I am, and I share that openly and honestly.
And so maybe complete this sentence for me. If
Sure.
someone says, Melissa Hull is ...
Melissa Hull is a passionate, committed, fun-loving, goofy woman who serves with her whole heart. That's what they would say.
That's awesome. And do you do private sessions? Like, can someone hire you
Absolutely.
one-on-one? And how does a one-on-one even work? Like, do you go to their house? They come to your place? Do you have an office? Like, what happens in a one-on-one? Talk to me about that.
So I am all about assisting people in becoming a partner in the quality of their thinking. So I like to think of myself as a compassionate disruptor of thoughts and behaviors that take us off track and keep us from where we ultimately want to be. So I have developed a coaching business. I work largely with women, but not exclusively with women. I also have coaching clients that are men. And we go through a process of asking a series of questions to really help them decide where it is that they want to be going in life and what are those obstacles, maybe internal or external barriers that are keeping them from arriving at that destination. And so I reflect back a lot of, I ask a lot of questions that are designed to open up new thinking, new awareness, and new discoveries, which ultimately leads to greater possibility.
Mm. Tell me about your most challenging client and how you managed to overcome the challenge of working with that individual or group of individuals.
Sure. There are some people that have come to me because of my background in like bereavement and loss and overcoming some really significant adversity that want it to be that I can give them this answer that will magically transform their situation, and they don't want to do the work. The work is the willingness to change the thinking, the willingness to be observant of the quality of your decision making. A person who is not willing to engage in the process is a person I can't help. I need a person to be willing and ready to be actionable. Otherwise, we're just standing in the same, place that they arrived. And that's not my goal. And it's not what I see as beneficial. Sometimes the hardest thing for me to do is to tell somebody, I don't think you're ready. And
Mm,
when you are, come back, but you're not ready. If I can
wow.
say consistently that you're not taking the actions that you have articulated to me you would take, we'll talk about it. We'll ask, some deeper questions. We'll look again. But if that becomes the pattern, then I know the person isn't ready to truly redesign their life, because redesign means that you're an actionable participant in the process. I can't coach anybody unless they are willing to receive and then to take action. And I've let go a handful of people over the last 5 years.
Now, I got a problem. I have children
Yeah,
as well. I have a problem because I'm a producer, and a producer's job is to put things together. You're always thinking, at least I am, I'm always thinking about how things could be put together in a way that they can be produced.
sure.
So when my 12-year-old calls me, I have a habit of leaning into production mode, like, hey, why don't you line your trucks up in an order and put the red ones in front of the green ones, and maybe that's going to help. And I have to fight that. I don't fight real hard, but I have to fight that feeling to say, he's a kid. He's not calling me for professional advice. He doesn't need professional advice. He just wants to tell me about blah, blah. Do
Right.
you find yourself coaching your kids?
You know, um, my kids are very good about letting me know if that's starting to happen. What I have found works best is I listen. And listening has been probably the one skill that I have struggled to develop because I'm a talker. I look at things like you. I too have had kind of the role of the producer. And I'm like, okay, well, if you did this, and this, we could get there, or you could have that,
Right,
you could solve that. But that's what makes sense for me. And what I have found is that in listening to my children and then asking maybe a question, well, if you could maybe change something, what would you change? And I just give it back to them and let them continue to share with me. That's been so much more effective than standing and kind of trying to say, well, stop doing this, start doing that. If I just listen and I'm present, that has been the single most effective tool in deepening and really strengthening my relationships with both my 25-year-old son and my 17-year-old daughter is listening.
yeah, that's good advice. That's real good advice because I find that I'm doing it even in my professional relationships. Like I'm spending too much time trying to educate
Yeah,
instead of just listening. What is this person going through? This person is just trying to talk to me about that, not necessarily come to me for a workshop. And if they are coming, the workshop, that's a different story. Um, I got a little bit of time left, so I want to
Mm.
ask you on a deeper level, do you think that your success, your personal success, your achievements in life, is that due to your faith in God, your being in the right place at the right time, you drew the right lucky number? You know what I mean? Could anybody do it if they just followed the manual? Like, what is your take on your success?
I think the single, the best thing I could say, or the best answer I could give to you, is that I've always been willing to take an action. Like, I have always been willing to do something about what it was that I either wanted to achieve. I'm not afraid to fail because I believe it was Albert Einstein that said that failure is an honor reserved for only those who try. And it stuck with me. And I thought I would rather be honored by trying and doing and maybe not getting to where I thought I would be, but I'm always going to learn and I'm always growing. So I have never been afraid to do anything that I've really wanted to. That's not to say that I want to like jump out of airplanes. That is terrifying to me. But if I wanted to learn how to pilot the plane, I would do that.
Right,
I've
right.
never been afraid to start something, and I've never felt like a failure when it didn't work out. It just was a process that I took and I've learned, and maybe I'm going to pivot. Maybe I'm just not. Maybe I just discovered that's really not for me. But I've never been afraid to try something, and I've always made sure that I was taking an action toward a goal.
And you know what? I really can't close the show on a stronger, more powerful message. How do we find you on social media? Everybody's
Yes.
trying to be on the WWW. Where do we go?
MelissaHull.com, and that's MelissaHull.com on all
That's simple.
platforms, and that is my website as well.
That's simple. Good to know. And do
Yeah,
you have any events coming up that you want to promote? You want to tell us about some place you're going to
I
be?
I have some really exciting new products coming into the market here real soon. It's all about helping female dentists create more harmony and success within their home life and their professional life. So I'm focusing in on
Interesting.
dentistry because that's also a part of what I do.
I didn't know that female dentists were having that problem. Wow.
No,
See,
I think female dentists they have unique challenges with those that are moms and they have spouses maybe inside of the dental field, outside of the field of dentistry. And it's just about learning how to create that optimal way of living both at home and in your practice, and how to do that seamlessly and without a lot of struggle.
wow. Makes me want to be a woman. That's cool. I do have time for one last question. So I'm going to
Sure.
ask you, speaking of being a woman,
Yes.
I think that motivational field is kind of male dominated. Have you run into anything that you would call pretty girl problems in your career?
Oh gosh, that's a really interesting question. I have I have had I've had experiences in the industry that have left me feeling like maybe sometimes it can be a little bit maybe too like how do I say this? Maybe some doors were opened because of the way I look. But I found that once that door was opened, it wasn't a door that I necessarily wanted to walk through. So yeah, I've had some struggles with that, but I've also had some wonderful experiences as well. Just like everybody else, there's both good and bad kind of actors inside of my industry. And I just have
Mhm.
learned to be very discerning and very slow to say yes. I take time to get to know people before I commit to things because I don't want situations like that in my life.
Mm. I wonder if, you are pretty and you happen to be blonde as well. I wonder if you ever encountered someone not thinking you knew enough or you weren't educated enough. You weren't the pro because
Um,
how could you be? Look at you.
I think in the beginning, a lot of people took my kindness as weakness. And there's another side of me that is very strong. And I have no problem creating a boundary with people and enforcing it. I am no pushover at all. So I've had to I grew up in a really small town. I rode a school bus. I've had my hair pulled. I've had people beat me up, and I've had to learn how to defend myself from a little girl on. Thankfully, I'm not fighting anybody off anymore, but I've learned that the best way for me to defend myself is to be very slow to say yes, to get to know a person over time and let their character be revealed to me rather than assume that they have the same intentions that I do.
Amen to that. Hey, that's what show was about today. Listen, if you ever want to be on the show, I told you, please, we'd love to have you. I want to thank my guest, Melissa Hall, for being on this with us today. And you know what I say? Live the life you love the life you live. Guys, it's not a dress rehearsal. This is the real thing.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.